A special episode this week, as the Megacanners are joined by journalist Wael Eskandar to talk about his journey from asking permission from the cops to buy an ice cream on Hermannplatz to watching them brutalize protesters with impunity on a weekly basis. Well done, Kai Wegner. If only there was some kind of catastrophic lesson in German history to learn from to prevent this kind of thing. Prost!
In Berlin's heart, where news is unveiled, Megan and Conrad with German tales. The German news, it's tough to bear, but with Megacanners, they're ready to head Conrad, daily news at hand. Megan feels to spare time to crack those cans. With each sip she takes, the mag is her shield. But will it last the news? 'Cause that was the deal.
Hello everyone, it's time for another episode of Megan's Megacon. I'm Megan, I'm here in Berlin with Konrad Werner. Hello Konrad.
Hello.
And we have a returning guest today, Wael Eskandar, who is here, resident in Berlin, but originally from Egypt. Hello, how are you?
Hi.
Nice to have you back. And you are a freelance journalist, writer, ranter, mainly you're saying on Instagram at the moment, but also...
And a Substack.
And Substack.
Yeah.
Everyone has Substack now, that's good. But yours is actually very good.
Thanks.
It's called Notes from the Underground. He's also written for Zeit Online, Jadalia, Aram Online, and The Independent.
And you came to talk... Oh, sorry. Alcohol first.
So
First. I thought that was midway.
No. You can't get midway through discussing what some of the stuff that we're going to have to discuss. So, no one's getting a choice today.
Okay.
I chose for you.
right.
I am not drinking this evening because I have to go to the doctor very early tomorrow morning. I'm fine, but I don't want to have any alcohol in my system. So I'm having a Tanqueray 00, which don't always find. I don't know if you remember this, but when you were on last time, you mentioned that you really like Smirnoff Ice, or that you used to. And I have found a Smirnoff Ice Mega Can.
Wow. That was
Yeah.
a long time ago.
You,
When I used to
yeah.
like it.
You probably still won't like it because
Yeah.
you won't have had one in a very long time, but you're going, you can either pretend to drink it or really drink it. And I got you a Jack and Ginger because...
Oh, yes.
I love
You know what I like.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Now that is going to be a Smirnoff Ice, but like double the percentage. So
Okay.
enjoy.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Okay. Good. Very good. Oh, it's nice to have that one back again.
20 years. This
Yeah.
is a time machine.
It is. It takes
So-
me back to the Battle of the Bands in the fort in Dungannon. Probably a different place for you.
That wasn't my experience with it.
So maybe we should start with explaining about the last time that Wael was on, which was in 2022. Do you even remember 2022 and what happened and why you were here?
I know, I remember it clearly. It was a prelude to everything that happened next. In 2022, I was caught up in a banned Nakba protest. At that time, I wasn't even protesting, wasn't aware of what was going on. I was racially profiled,
You were just trying to get to the park.
Yes, I was trying to get to the park, you remember. Bike in hand, got kettled in, no talking to the police, and then afterwards I was charged with participating in a banned protest. But then I wrote an entire piece about it. I screamed with German police, and I sent it to the police, and then they didn't really charge me.
So while you were being blocked off, you weren't allowed to go, kettled, you went and got an ice cream, and you asked the police whether you could get an ice cream, and they said yes, but only one scoop.
Only one scoop.
You
Yes.
could only, which is a lovely detail.
Yeah, it was pretending that I was free to do what I want because I wasn't yet arrested, but still, the ice cream scoops are, controlled.
And was that your sort of first contact with the German police?
Yeah, that was my first contact with German police.
Okay.
Yeah.
So fast forward to now, 3 years later, how often have you had contact with the German
How's
police
that relationship going?
Yeah.
Oh, I think after the ice cream, it deepened a lot, and we see each other on a regular basis.
Oh, that's
Okay.
Yeah.
nice.
Well, I mean, there are more protests now, but I go there very deliberately, as opposed to last time, and I still talk to them a lot.
And this is sort of your work now, right? You go to protests and report on protests.
Yeah, I mean, I'm reporting on protests a lot, but also things related to the German state and German security. I mean, security has been my beat when I was in Egypt. I never thought it would still be my beat here, but German security, policing, all of that and power is still what I report on, and protests are a huge part of that.
So some of us have been to protests, maybe not as many as you, and some people are maybe not in Germany or not able to go to protests for whatever reason. Can you paint us like a little picture? If you go to like a Palestinian solidarity demo in Berlin, who's there? What's happening? Because it's also being weirdly reported on in the German mainstream media.
Well, it depends on when you go. Like when we started going to protests, it was something, changed into another. But let's just say following October 7th, 2023, the protests were first banned, and you had very strange activities from the police kind of like trying to ban it, but then they eased that off, and then you had bigger protests, and things escalated over time. So it really depends on when. But I can tell you that right now, for example, they've forbidden protests from marching and bringing their voice across to people in neighborhoods. They're often kettled, often criminalized before they do anything. But you would expect to find, depending on the day, depending on who's organizing, you'd find, hundreds to thousands of people. You'd have very, very strong police presence.
Yeah.
The people inside are kind of like from all walks of life. It's mostly an internationalist and I would say primarily secular protest. And you have definitely what we've seen consistently over the years, overreaction and violence from the Berlin police. So that's kind of what you would expect. And the devil is in the details, of course. How they enact the violence, why, is the matter of contention over media reports and what we see with our own eyes, which rarely align.
So how often do you go? To everyone that you and when you go, you go as a reporter, right?
Yes, I mean when the protests first started, I wasn't doing so much of reporting. I was doing a little bit of photography and participating, and then I realized that I had more of a role to document and go as a reporter, and so eventually now I go as a reporter to report on what's going on, to try and kind of like observe and see what's happening. How often do I go? I used to go a lot more in the past, but it's become so kind of typical what to expect. In a protest, whether it's moving or not, police accuses it of anti-Semitism or doing something illegal, beating up people, dissolving the demo, and lying about what actually happened. So sometimes these days I skip it a lot, because what can I do more than the violent videos that people see? I try to focus more on going once every 2 weeks rather than once a week. They're happening like maybe 1 to 3 times a week, these protests. But I focus on going once every 2 weeks and kind of reporting. And depending on the protest, if there's something new, I report on it and kind of bring a perspective to what's actually going on in the protest.
What's fascinating about your perspective is that you actually come from a military dictatorship where there are a lot of police protests, and you were there during the revolution in Egypt and Tahrir Square and everything. And how does it compare? What's it like?
Look, I hate to say this, but it's very familiar territory for me, how the police operates and how the state. It's still not as, let's say, expensive to protest, because in Egypt at the time of the revolution, in many of them it was really dangerous. You could get shot, and much later you can get arrested and spend a lot of time in jail. But the way the state operates is all so familiar, including what the politicians say, including how the mainstream media reports, and including how the police retell the case, the story that you've seen with your own eyes, with a lot of lies in there. That is very common, and I kind of understand that mentality. And the thing is, what I've always been saying, even in Egypt, as long as you have some kind of force or violence, you have to make up lies to account for why you did that. If it's not just violence, like if it's not like a fair use of violence. So I've seen that very, very common, and it's very similar. The one difference is that the Berlin police here accompany the protests very, very closely. And in Egypt, it's always like there are lines facing one another. You could see sometimes happening the same way, like this confrontation, but the police is very, very close. But it's also a style of policing that every country chooses, which is slightly different. So there are a lot of similarities between the state and how the police operate and how the rhetoric that is being used and Egypt. So it's a little familiar, but I would say despite all of the violence, slightly safer than policemen just like shooting with impunity, which is,
Well, that's a low bar. the low, that's not even a bar. That's not. So I was just re-listening to how you were describing your encounter with the ice cream and how you were describing these differences in 2022. And it was somewhat depressing. And you were like, yeah, obviously it's terrible. Like, you're just on the way to the park, you get racially profiled, you get like kettled into this thing, you can't leave. It's just absurd. But the experience you described was the police officers were being very respectful, and they were sort of this sense that they were kind of having to do this because that's what they've been told. You didn't feel sort of physically under threat. That has presumably, even if it's not at this stage of Egyptian police shooting people, would you say we've shifted on that spectrum in...
Oh, yes. I mean...
Germany in a relatively short space of time.
The Berlin police right now is one of the most violent in all of the European capitals. I used to dread the, French police, the Greek police, but the consistency of violence in the Berlin police, which escalated over time. It wasn't always like that, but then they were given a political green light, and I think from Kai Wegner in particular, the mayor of Berlin, has been very explicit in commending the police whenever they enact violence. And the way that they do this kind of violence is, not all the policemen, by the way, are violent and want to beat up people.
Yeah.
But they have a duty towards one another to protect their colleagues. So all you have to do is send in a few violent ones that have a thirst for violence and blood. Yeah. And that's all you need for the entirety of the police to act in that way. Yeah. So no, it's extremely violent, and I thought I still dreaded the French police, but the amount of videos and violence that I'm seeing is incredible.
Like I was saying to you before we started recording, and obviously this is me speaking from my immense kind of white Western European EU English speaking privilege, I had to write to my embassy this weekend because of such graphic footage of someone who looks like me, speaks like me, being brutalized by a police officer. And that is, obviously I'm very privileged to be in that position, but that is what the fuck is...
Yes, but it's been happening to people people who don't look like you for such a long time. Yeah. But I think depends on how you want to look at it. A beautiful thing or a horrible thing is, I think a lot of people have put their bodies on the line and put themselves in that space, and that is real solidarity to be part of it, and not just cheering on for the Arab people being beaten by the police. They put themselves there, and that is real solidarity. And what happened is that the profiling of who to beat up has shifted dramatically, and it's like, no, being white does not protect you from...
I think I maybe explained that poorly. Like, I don't want to... It's appalling if anyone is getting brutalized by the police, but I think I'm not surprised when the Berlin police act in I'm not surprised if any police act in a racist manner, but it... Like you said, when the profile, I don't know. No, but doing a poor job of explaining this.
No, I understand. I understand that because we've been accustomed to racism, and it's really bad and everything. But we understood that there's a problem with racism. Yeah. But the escalation of racism into targeting people based on their ideas is a kind of strange escalation. And what applies here is Fanon's idea of fascism, which is colonialism practiced in Europe. That's his definition. Of course, we could talk about that in some certain ways, but what's happening to white people in solidarity is that, oh yeah, sure, we can lift that privilege off of you and treat you like the rest.
Thank you for putting that way more eloquently than I was saying. Or I hadn't really thought about it, and I think that is, yeah.
And but when you're in the demos, do you feel like it's just like a few officers who are out of control, or do you feel like that it's part of a strategy or a tactic when they see violence like that?
Yeah, no, it's not out of control. It's very deliberate. What I mean is, when I said a few officers are violent, they're the executioners. But I don't mean that they're rogue. Yeah. The entirety of the police force has a role, and they're getting all of their instructions over their earpiece, and it's very deliberate what they're trying to do. Like when all of them are acting in unison to say, like, we're dismantling your demo, when they're given instructions to go after people violently, it's not a matter of choice to a few rogue ones. It's a very deliberate message politically that you will be punished on the spot. We're not going to wait for the courts. You're going to be beaten up. So it's all over the radio. It's all over the instructions, and it's extremely deliberate. But you do have some who are using excessive force. And by the way, the cop that you could see punched Kitty several times. I mean, this cop has always been violent. We know this. He unnecessarily. Yeah. It is something that you could see. And I actually confronted one of the cops that were standing there, just like a bystanding cop, and asked her, hey, listen, how is that possible? You should arrest this guy instead of kettling the protesters. And she said, well, what do you want me to do? I'm with them. I can't arrest anyone. Yeah. And so basically cops can't stop one another. But I could see in her eyes that she knew that this person was excessively violent. It did not surprise her that this person was doing that. And maybe they don't approve of it, but they have no choices around it. They have to act together to enact this kind of violence and repression.
This is the thing, though. They do have choices.
What kind of choices?
Well, I don't really buy her thing of like, well, I can't really do anything. Isn't it also in like German law, like if you see someone just following orders is no longer a legal
I believe
excuse.
that was a big thing.
That's a whole thing. That's what they brought in.
She's not the only one who told me this. I went with the same video to other policemen, and they said, go to the next police station and report it. And then another one, very, very honestly, saying, I cannot stop a policeman in action. That's how they describe themselves. When they're actually taking action, they do not talk to one another. That is the directives. But honestly, it's orders. If you think it's about legality, no, forget it. That's not how police generally operate, and not in particular police, riot police, or this. So the choice is just to quit or be part of it, or be just like gentle and nice and have a conversation with me instead of arresting me.
So you often speak to the officers when you're there, you said. Like, what kinds of things do you talk about? Usually
when I see something, I try and discuss it, like especially the videos actually are released while we're in the protests. Right. So I ask, for example, one time I was asking, how is it possible that a person in custody is being headbutted with a helmet, to break their nose? And so the cop was like, you never know what happened. I said, no, what happened before, that's their excuse. You don't know what happened before. I said, anyone in custody should not be beaten up, and it's non-negotiable. It's already, this person is subverted. There is no excuse. And then they have all of these excuses to justify things for themselves. So one of them is, you don't know what happened before. And if you know what happened before, trust me, the police will look into it and this person will be punished. Of course, we know that they're not punished, because another policeman told me, hey, I was accused 3 times. I was always found innocent because I am innocent. So this is the kind of thing that they're told. And they also have this notion that you don't understand the full picture. They're always told that they don't understand the full picture. And then they say that to me, and I say, well, I look at it from different sides. If you don't understand it, that's your thing. But I look into it, and there's no excuse for that. So a couple of these things keep them going, because they also think they have these myths, like the protesters start the violence. In my experience, I've always seen the police escalate before the demonstrators. This is never reported, but then again, also, the amount of Jewish people that we have showing up is never reported in German media. This
Literally never.
Yes.
Never.
Sometimes they're reported, but they're always reported as self-hating Jews or anti-Semitic Jews. That happens.
Or some kind of it's said in some sort of way that, subtly undermines something. Not just like, or that it's some kind of organization that might have, it's, what do we fucking do? I really wish there was alcohol in my Megacan. How's your Smirnoff Ice going?
I'll have another sip.
Yeah, you have to keep drinking.
We gotta keep going somehow, even if it's Smirnoff Ice.
I mean,
what do you think has happened in the last 2 years? What have you noticed?
Well, the police have become more absurd and more emboldened over the 2 years.
But don't they? I mean, surely if people are filming them, that must slow them down a little bit, no?
No, I'll tell you what happened. The problem is not that the police is being brutal. At first, it was very shocking, but the media had a role. The media had a role to spin it that these people deserved to be attacked. These people deserve to be assaulted. And that has emboldened the police. And actually, when you have like the mayor saying, "Bravo, police," when they're obviously extremely violent, then why would they stop? There is no incentive for these cops to stop, especially that I can imagine, hundreds of cases of violence against the police where they were internally acquitted. And by the way, Germany is one of 2 countries in Europe where there is no civilian oversight over the police, and therefore you can't have independent investigations.
Oh,
and so
really?
the police investigates itself.
I didn't know that.
that's probably a great idea.
What's the other country?
Italy.
Right.
Yeah.
What a coincidence. What a
Getting
coincidence.
the band back together. Band never broke up. They were just on a break. Oh, God. Yeah, it's...
But I was telling this to one of the police officers where I was having a conversation. He says, "Yeah, just report it to the police." And I was like, "Yeah, but you don't have an independent investigation." And he says, "Yeah, well, you have to change that." And I said, wait. Until that changes, me as media, I have to be there. I have to monitor your crimes. And at which point he tried to get me in, but his other officers denied to give me access.
And are the police allowed to talk to you, or don't they have like a special press officer who's supposed to be the spokesperson? And or is there someone like that there?
I don't. They don't give interviews. They are allowed to talk to you, but if you like say, "Hey, can you tell me about what happened?" They would never do this. But usually, people just keep rolling and have conversations, and that's how you get the conversation recorded. Instead of like, "Hey, can you record?" But also, when you're filming the police, don't film their faces on purpose. That's another thing that should not be there. You should just be filming what's going on. If they want to talk to you, then you capture that, but don't try to interview them. They're not really, they're not going to give you the interview particularly, but you get all of these information when you just interact with them.
And have you ever been threatened for filming them or anything like that? What happens? Do you ever feel intimidated because you're holding a camera? I
was denied entry to a certain place where other journalists were allowed, even though I had the accreditation. I was assaulted before. Well, I mean, I was assaulted when I was filming. They were abusing a minor, and I was walking through with them just because this minor was like saying, "Hey, I'm a minor and you're hurting me," and I wanted to document it. And then a policewoman just said, "Get out of the way," and said, like, "I'm pressed, I'm documenting," and then she pushed me against the police car. So pushes and shoves all the time happening. When I'm filming something, when they're brutalizing someone, the cops don't put their hands in front of the camera, but they put their entire bodies. There's something that they have there about freedom of press where they subvert it by not putting their hand, because it's kind of illegal to stop the camera. Do I feel threatened? Well, I don't know. It's not a feeling that I say I have, but eventually it doesn't surprise me if they push me out of the way. They've pushed journalists out of the way and assaulted them several times. But that's the price you pay for trying to document them.
But this is like, it doesn't have to be this way. It's just so, and I find increasingly particularly where I used to live closer to Hermannplatz, and just the whole general vibe in the past few years of like any kind of police presence has just been so much. And also just this whole automatically, it doesn't surprise me when you say like they are the ones to like go, because it just seems like they are in this totally pumped up, constantly getting out of these massive vehicles that look like armored tanks rolling through. It was just in literally the days following October the 7th, you could just hear. I remember lying in bed trying to sleep in my flat in Reuterkiez, and you could just hear this like unrest, and you're just like, this is supposed to be Germany, but because people who live in this area are somehow deemed like we are, something happens in the Middle East and they just roll in tanks to Neukölln, like what the fuck? And that's just accepted. That is normalized in the German press because everyone is anti-Semitic there, and someone said something. I literally
Yeah, that's the time when they were like acting really like, I mean, they had desks taking people's notes, like they had mobile desks getting people's data for whatever they were doing, profiling people. One of the ways in which they justify being violent against people is expression. If you express something that they don't like, they say it's criminal, and then they go after you. Like, rather than arrest you, they just go after you, beat you up, and then when the police beats up people, they always accuse them of resisting. That's just a tactic. But
what, for example, what would be something that would provoke them like that?
Well, definitely the topmost reason why they arrest people is the slogan, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." Yeah. They have deemed it either anti-Semitic or a Hamas slogan, which it's neither.
But a German court has ruled that is freedom of speech, right? I believe that is not in. That isn't. Am I not right there? There's been a Berlin court ruling about that. Slogan.
Lots of Berlin court rulings. Most people are being acquitted for shouting that slogan. But
you're not going to go to court to just beat you up.
Yeah, I mean that's the point. That's the excuse to beat you up. And there have been, I don't know how many rulings of acquittal for that slogan, to a point where people sent a letter to the prosecution that says, hey, lift that ban on using that word in the police, and they refused, because it's a very good excuse and it's a very good battle point to fight people and enforce the police will that they can police what you say, even if a court decides that it's okay.
It sounds really grim, but working in a state institution as an educator, there is a lot of this that echoes with being a teacher. This idea that you do not, you have solidarity with your colleagues and this thing, but there are, and the fact that there can be changes on like a state level or whatever level that take a very long time to trickle down into classrooms, and people are like, no, who are they to tell me what I do on my Neukölln streets or my classroom or whatever. But like, there's fucking limits to that, and like you cannot just stand there and watch your colleague. It's just not acceptable. It's not. Do you get the sense that it is, because it comes down to racism within the police as well, like this is a sort of chance, or is it more just about authority and them exercising their power regardless of?
Well, there was a study by the Ministry of Interior that showed that, you know, there's a huge amount of racism that police experience from their colleagues. I don't know, like 65% of them experience police racism from their colleagues, and it's all directed against Arabs, Turks, and leftists. So that already existed way before October. But for example, From the River to the Sea and the Red Triangle are all coming from the top. But it's an excuse for the police to exhibit their racism or to enact it and brutalize people. So it's just like handed to them on a golden platter, in order to be able to, you know, commit violence with impunity. And that's like a high. I mean, you go back to Egypt and think about why cops are so brutal, because there is a high about being able to be violent against people and face no repercussions.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, what the dangerous part, where Berlin in particular is reaching, because most other cities and other places are not as violent as Berlin. And that's a crazy thing to me, because police are indeed kind of, it's a federated system, but the reason is, like, of course, the most number of Palestinians is in Berlin.
Yeah.
And then they have that green light from a mayor that is supporting this violence. And at the end of the day, the ideology of the police and the mayor do mandate how the police acts. And I think that's structurally a problem in Germany, that politicians have way too much control over what happens on the streets without checks and balances. And, you know, for me, that sounds like authoritarianism.
I mean, yeah.
So I just looked it up. There have been conflicting court rulings about the river to the sea thing.
Because no one in Germany knows what the fuck to do with it, so they just shit the bed every time it comes up.
So yeah, so there was one court ruling in the Berlin State Court in 2024 that said that slogan could be counted as Islamist and or anti-Semitic, but then whenever an activist has been brought up before a court, they've usually been acquitted for using that slogan. So it's kind of conflicting.
There is a principle behind it, is that depends on how you use it and your intent.
Right.
So definitely the slogan predates Hamas, so it's not a Hamas slogan, but it can be interpreted, that's what the police say, as a call for annihilation of all of Jews in Israel and so on. But when there are multiple interpretations, according to German jurisprudence, the benefit of the doubt is given to the person that has said it that way. So it would take a very ideological judge to say, no, it cannot mean anything but that. But basically, by the law and how it's really kind of interpreted, it's very difficult when it has multiple meanings to condemn someone of it, particularly that is not associated with a terror organization. But, you know, they can say whatever they want still.
Yeah, it's not out of the realms of possibility that people could be prosecuted, like that there would be a very ideological judge. Like, that's not, this is not a robust system. It doesn't seem for protecting people's freedom of speech. Yeah.
And we've seen that with a lot of other court cases, to be honest, like with students being, I mean, the idea of the students being tried for trespassing in their own universities. Right, for doing protests. And
explain that. What happened there?
Well, there were a couple of occupations within universities, FU and HU. And what universities do, and particularly in FU, which is really, really kind of extreme about this, is that they prosecute their students for saying, hey, we're considering you as trespassers while you're doing this demo. And so that kind of charge is basically used against the students, and then they're often fined and found, guilty of trespassing.
So then I believe the university authority has to call the police. Like, the police don't just move in on their own. If it's on university grounds, the university authorities have to call the police, don't they?
Yes, that started happening, and now it's become a regular occurrence. But I mean,
it's disgusting.
You know why it's crazy?
You don't call the fucking cops on your own students. What the fuck is wrong with you? Unless someone is committing a violent crime, it makes my blood boil.
Oh, thank you for being sane. But this is in Germany. This is crazy. But I can tell you that even in Egypt, it's I would say that Egyptians are, fans of authoritarianism. Understand that we're in a military dictatorship. Some of them support it, but no matter what, it's a really huge deal, even in a country like Egypt, to get police on campus. And Germans are like, oh yeah, that's normal. I mean, I don't understand it.
A few days after, and this is such a nuts thing that happened, a few days after, maybe 2 weeks after the October the 7th attacks, all Berlin schools got a letter from the Berlin Education Secretary detailing how to deal with things like, if a student says something that could be construed as anti-Semitic, please feel completely empowered to call law enforcement. This is to primary and secondary schools. There was incidences of teachers physically attacking their students to rip banners or flags out of their hands. And then, of course, you get this mealy-mouthed bullshit at the end, which was but of course this is a complex topic, and please feel free to make sure it's made, discuss it, provide opportunities for discussion in class. I'm like, you cannot then say to your, in a lot of schools, predominantly like Muslim or Arab class, like, oh, but yes, let's discuss it. But by the way, if you say the wrong thing, I'm able to call the police. Yeah. But
at least you were told to discuss it. I know that in certain universities, they're told don't talk to students if they come up and do an action. They're telling professors not to talk to students and call the police directly. And you're talking about academic spaces for adults where certain topics can be discussed. But I mean, that shows you this whole... What's most frightening to me is just the power of the state to enforce this ideology so seamlessly in all of its institutions. And here I mean like educational, I also mean unions, I also mean the media. That's too much power in the hands of politicians, and I think it's almost a lot of things that happen are actually illegal, but there's no one to call them out on it and hold them accountable.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, no, I think like what worries me the most is that German people don't seem to mind that this is happening, or that the German population does not seem to be very outraged that there are these sort of authoritarian moves in the government and in police. I mean, it just like that seems very scary to me, especially in this country.
It's very, very scary in this country. I agree, but that's been our struggle, right? We've been struggling because all of this suspension of civil liberties should worry anyone irrespective of their own ideology.
I mean, that's why we have a constitution, and that's good.
I'm very sad now. I will say that the Tanqueray... Oh, it's also zero sugar. Basically a health drink. Electrolytes.
It's basically a smoothie.
Oh, Jesus. Mind you, God, gin is really branded Super Empire. The one who persists obtains. Really?
Wow.
Persist. Define persist. And what are you obtaining? Are we talking like, nice tonic water? Or are we talking, the Raj?
Anything else you'd like to talk about? I'm actually just going through your article from last year in Disorient and trying to find something that we haven't already discussed.
Yeah, I wrote another one for Disorient called Berlin's...
Has broken its promise.
Has broken its promise.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned in this about how you wanted to change the slogan from the river to the sea, we demand equality. What happened there? Oh,
yeah, I suggested to people to use that. They were still arrested.
I think you just start going from the river and then they just points. But they've got, I don't know if you've seen, like, I remember being in a protest and there was just police standing with like little laminated folders of like banned symbols and they're like trying to check it against flags and stuff. I'm like, what are we... And there's, like, now watching what is happening in Gaza, like, I do not... It sounds incredibly naive, but, like, it's unbelievable that people fucking showing solidarity for this are getting brutalized on the streets. And again, Germans don't seem to care. And yet this is all in the name of never again will we return to fascism. Like, it doesn't... It's so ridiculous that it sounds stupid saying it, but then, like, what else is there to say? Like, and why is not everyone...
Two things I want to say. Germany is a dormant fascist state that is being activated at the moment, and the German state supports genocide. That's the explanation for all that we're seeing, that they are in support of the genocide of Palestinians, and everything else is...
It's the only one that makes sense. Like, it's the only one at this stage, I think, would...
I mean, but you can say that about almost every European country, couldn't you? I mean...
True, but there is something a little exceptional about Germany, especially that it says that it's fighting anti-Semitism, but the Jewish people protesting are bearing the brunt of their policies. All of Germany's anti-Semitism commissioners, none of them are Jewish.
But Germans know what anti-Semitism is, and no one else does. And I'm saying that as a joke, but that is literally what I have been told.
But this is really, this is just saying that a billionaire understands poverty because they have money and they've stolen so much. Like, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. They're the perpetrators of anti-Semitism and genocide. Sure, you understand them, but you don't know how to stop them.
I think there's, I mean, yeah, I don't want to defend it, but I think that there is a kind of point to that, is that the idea of that is that it should be German people sort of judging themselves rather than getting Jewish people to decide when they're being, I mean, there's an idea behind that, the idea that they're not Jewish people who are anti-Semitism commissioners.
Sure, but then when you're...
There's a sort of, they're sort of supposed to be self-policing, right?
But when you're sending Jewish people to seminars about anti-Semitism, what does that say? And when you're arresting Jewish people under the guise of like protecting people from anti-Semitism, what does that really say?
Yeah, that is not very defensible. Yeah, it's like,
but I mean, I don't know. I don't know enough about the psyche. I can only read what I see in front of me, and I feel that this idea of Germany dealing with its past is clearly, demonstrably, not the right way to deal with your past.
But that's very difficult for German people to take.
Yeah.
Because they feel like that they have really tried to deal with their past. You know, that's like, I think that's why it's become such an emotional issue in Germany. Is because it's like it's something about the very core of being German, or being a post-war German. It's sort of like you're being kind of attacked right in your heart. That's what makes it so difficult, I think.
But also that explains why society is silent around this.
Yeah.
Because
I think
people are like in between, well, do I stand up for Palestinians or do I get accused of anti-Semitism and not dealing with my past? And that's kind of a hurdle to overcome. And, you know, it answers the question of why are people not rising up. But also, like, there's this, looking into it's not happening to me yet.
No.
Which means it's okay.
What I can say is that, like, sort of as a German, as I am, but, even though I was not brought up here, but I think that there was like 20 years after the war where everyone in power in German society was basically still a Nazi, but they weren't allowed to say they were Nazis. And then in the 60s, all their children grew up and they became the 60s hippies revolutionaries, and they were like accusing their parents. They were like, there was this sort of mass movement of people saying you are all Nazis, and we're going to tell you we're going to expose you as still these Nazis, you know. So there was this sort of big generational clash in the 60s in Germany, and I think those people are now older and they feel that they had dealt with it then, and now to be told by young people and people, for people from different cultures that actually you haven't dealt with it at all, I think that's what's very tough for them.
And I think also, this is something I've talked a lot about with colleagues, like, as people trying to educate people, like, how has this gone so wrong, and what do you think? And I think, and what you just said, Conrad, there's been this, like, othering of the problem. It was my parents or my grandparents, or it was those awful Nazis that came in, and this kind of making it monstrous, because it was monstrous what happened, but it wasn't monsters that did it. It was normal people.
Yeah, and it was your mum and dad. I mean, it was like,
And then you have like shame, which I think is what a lot of it is. And shame is arguably in this situation very, very justified. But if you have to move beyond that, if you want to empower people, like it's not if you're feeling shame, and I think that's what you're saying as well, people are afraid to speak out. They don't know what to do because it's like paralysis of like, well, it's the worst thing ever to be accused of anti-Semitism in Germany because of this. And that needs to be there, but it needs to be there in a different form that is not going to allow, it's inexcusable, but I think that's maybe the explanation. I don't know. It doesn't really matter why they're doing it. The time's come, lads. Get on. I wanted to ask, like, when I was reading the article that you wrote in 2024, you maybe not like on a hopeful note, but like there was like thing, and then I was listening to you more recently on another podcast, and you maybe didn't sound as hopeful, or it's already too late, or like what
let me tell you something related to German society. And there were a lot of anti-AfD demos that says, hey, no to sending people home, welcome migrants and everything. But in those demos, the Palestinians were kicked out and said, go home. And I think there's a lot of cognitive dissonance. I think there's a lot of posturing. I think people have inherited their salvation instead of worked for it. And that's why they think that they're
God, you're very good. Like, just like
Inherited your salvation. That's fine.
fucking brilliant. I'm
No,
just
I
like
It's easy when you say you already have it. What they're protecting is their inheritance of that salvation.
Yeah.
They have to work for it again, but they don't want to.
No.
So we've had a chance. I think within the first 6 months of the genocide, we got whoever we could have got. There was enough to understand what never again actually means. And if you didn't get it by then all that we're going to get is people understanding that to save themselves, they will have to condemn it after it's successful. And by the way, the genocide has been successful, and it's kind of safe to go against it now. And yet, even now, people are a little hesitant because they need to be given a green light by their government. It's like this, a bit like Germans are a bit like Vorauseilende Gehorsam, which means the obedient person who does what the master says before the master says it. Once that green light is given, they will be against it. It's fine. They don't want to be seen as immoral people, but it takes a lot of guts. And I come from a place where it takes a lot of guts to stand up to the government.
Yeah.
I've learned that the hard way. I think Europeans need to learn that because they haven't been put to the test. Palestine is a test. Mm-hmm. Going against your own government, going against your own media. And whoever's passed is passed. But it's a test that a lot of people failed. And so I lose hope in a society that is not even standing up for the mere basics of civil liberties when they're violated.
Okay. Fuck. And on that note, I don't know. Well,
I've got nothing. And I'm fucking
to,
stone cold sober as well.
Well, I think we have to slowly wrap up at some point because we could be all night.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
thank you very much. Do we have anything else to add?
No, just thank you.
Is there anything you'd like
much,
to? We could do like in the New York Times podcast. Is there any books you'd like to recommend? anything we should read?
There is one not a book, but an episode of Black Mirror that I highly recommend.
Okay.
It's called Men Against Fire. And that episode, while it's not the most entertaining on its own, kind of an underrated episode, but it shows how people are brainwashed into seeing certain people as roaches and not human. And I think that what the media has done and what the state has done here is kind of dehumanize Palestinians and the Palestinian protests, pro-Palestinian protests, as non-human, which allows society to see that beating them, defaming them, being unjust to them is fair. So I would recommend that.
Okay, good.
Yeah, if the warnings from history, which are deafening, are not going to work, maybe Black Mirror will do it. But thank you so much. You speak and write unbelievably eloquently about, and thank you for your time to come and do that.
Was great. And check out the speak of the devil.
Someone's wearing a kuffia.
Okay. Thanks very much, and check out your Substack, Notes from the Underground, and talk again sometime, hopefully.
Thank you. It was great being on.
Okay.
How's your mega?
I finished mine ages ago.
Oh, you always finish yours.
Okay.
Working through it with kind of a necessary numbness.
This is why we have them.
Great.
It's horrible to do it sober.
Great.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Megacanners, German news in English with a cocktail can. The German news, it's quite a test. With Megan's Mega, you're feeling refreshed. Ooh, Megan's Megacan, German news in English with a cocktail can. Deutsche Nachrichten sind düster und schwer. Down the Mega,
Defy the fear.
Yeah.
It's actually quite a positive message to give to people.
So.
I like to think that we have quite a positive impact on our listeners.
I hope so.
Because we try and get them to defy the fear of listening to the news all day.
I mean, it's better than reading a German newspaper. Surely.
I would definitely recommend listening to our podcast more than reading any German newspaper.
German newspapers barely have pictures.
No.
Like fucking, it's just a brick of text.
Oh, yes.
It's
And they seem to make a
awful.
virtue of it. They think it's like so great to have no text.
Not like you Americans
pictures.
with your fucking
Colour pictures.
decadent pictures in
I
your
know.
newspapers.
Yeah,
What's
like-
that? A crossword puzzle? Oh, no
You have
wonder
to-
you had Trump. Jesus Christ, everyone! Like, there's a middle ground.
You have to concentrate on the news. It's very important. And you have to like keep it there.
Just have a mega.
Have a moment. Give us a picture every now and then.
Just a
and-
wee picture, maybe of,
Yeah.
a diagram.